Hi, everyone. Welcome to CenterCode's webinar, Surviving to Thriving, 3 Ways to Maximize User Testing in a Downturn. I'm Brianna, CenterCode's Content Marketing Generalist and your moderator for today. So thanks for joining us. To start, I'd like to cover some housekeeping items as everyone settles in. I'll be recording this webinar and we'll make sure that you guys all get a copy of that after this session, the next day or so. I will be collecting your questions throughout the session, so please don't be shy. Submit your questions in the Q&A box and we'll get to those at the end. Also, we're excited to announce that we launched our newest ebook, which is a dog fooding tester guide for internal employee beta tests. So what's awesome about this guide is it explains the strong influence that dog fooding has on increasing employee participation. That's really like the #1 problem in alpha tests is participation. So this will help kind of understand the nuances with that and basically walks you through the essential components of managing a dog fooding program, or also known as alpha testing. Help you set clear expectations and really allow you to get a higher engagement within your tests. So without further ado, as an introduction to CenterCode, for those not familiar with us, we offer solutions for really a variety of use cases. We'll kind of go through these 4 that you see on the screen here. So firstly, we help companies bring their product to market by engaging with their target market, so they can collect useful feedback before product launch to ensure that it's successful. Traditionally, you can think of this as beta tests, user acceptance tests, also known as UAT, or field tests. You'll see that on the left-hand side there. We also offer solutions for product growth. So this means recruiting customers to identify issues and enhancements with continuous software updates. So this might sound familiar as progressive delivery, early access, advisory boards. And then moving over to the right, again, is customer zero, another way to collect employee feedback. And by collecting their feedback early, you'll really be able to establish that product culture within your company and make those product improvements along the way. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, which is a really cool one, what we call competitive edge. So that's where we tap into your competitors' customers to gain feedback on their products, which can be used to improve your products, which is super cool. Consider this competitive intelligence, comparative research, market testing, things of that sort. So with all that said, those are our solutions, and they're what we help companies do. How we do that is by one of 2 ways. We have our platform that customers can use on their own to build their programs and achieve those goals, or we also have platform services to support you guys along the way to run your programs for you. So we packed a lot in there, but with all that said, and the reason that you guys are all here today, I'd like to now hand it over to John Little, Senior VP of Product Marketing and our host today. Thanks for being here, John.
Thanks a lot, Brianna. It's great to be here. Thanks for everyone who's been able to join or just watching this later on. It's funny, looking at my picture there, it's obviously a little bit old, and back when that picture was taken, doing Zoom meetings and webinars were always a little bit awkward because I didn't use a camera that much, didn't hop on an online call that much, but now it's just second nature for all of us. So it's an interesting little thought. I am the Senior VP of Product Marketing here at CenterCode. My background is inside UX research and business management in general, in hardware and software and consumer and business. And really, as you know, hardware, software, consumer and business products all have a lot of overlap, especially these days. There's hardly any hardware products that are connected going out there that don't have software that's being updated on them. That's a lot of business people who are using consumer products and vice versa. But some of my operating principles, and I think you'll see this throughout this presentation as well, are focused communication and having a sense of urgency. It's focusing on the right things and making sure you stay focused on the right thing, communicating with people well, appropriately, and having a sense of urgency, just getting the stuff done as you need to get it done. That said, let's hop into this here. Relatively small agenda for a lot of slides. I think these slides will go by fast. First off, I'd like to talk about some big challenges that we are potentially facing in front of us, and you could be facing today yourself. These are things that I've faced since I've passed. Second, some quality-focused opportunities. What is, specifically with your beta program, some opportunities you may be able to find there that could help you out. And lastly, how can Center Code help with that? So the challenge we have in front of us today really is, looks like some cutbacks are coming in, and we'll be cutting down on resources in general, budgets, testing, and personnel. Just looking at the news, reading testing sites, reading business sites. This all looks like it's kind of imminent in front of us. And sometimes things go in cycles. It looks like we may be in another cycle right now. Even though this is happening, though, companies have to continue to produce products. So the product releases aren't slowing down at all. Everything still is moving full speed ahead, because they need the products to be out there. They need the products to be successful in order just to continue to survive and thrive. So what does it look like? Just a few points we've seen in the past. Start initially by getting additional management reviews on everything. So if you want to know what's being spent and why it's being spent, and exactly what's happening with all the different programs that are running some company, start seeing some hiring and purchasing freezes. So things slow down on that front. Again, just more oversight of what's going on. There's cutbacks in operational resources. This could be pens and pencils. Just seen that happen there exactly. But also the big piece for the quality of your product is the required test equipment, or the required number of units, or the number or the methods you can get in contact with people to test it. If your lab starts shrinking, or you're outsourcing to other organizations, that shrinks as well. And worst case scenario is start getting team consolidations and layoffs. And for myself, this happened kind of this way. There was 2 invites that went out. One was to conference room A, the other one was to conference room B. If you're inside one, they asked you to leave. You were inside of the other, they asked you to stay and continue to do the same job with fewer resources. And the ones who stayed, in some cases, wish they had left. So if you're inside this position, or you see that something is similar coming up, you would be thinking, now what? One thing I'd like to point out in particular is beta. Take a look at that. There's a good chance you can get something from your beta program that you aren't getting from it today. And if you're not directly involved with the beta program, you could look around for this and find some use right here. And really what it is shifting from a beta mindset to a delta mindset. And say, what's the difference? If you haven't heard that terminology before, it's pretty simply like this right here. Beta testing is really just an idea. We ran a survey a couple of years back and came back with over 100 terms that are used for beta testing. Beta is a time in the product development lifecycle. It can be very short inside of agile or lean product. It can be very long inside of a waterfall developed product. Delta testing is a specific method. It's predictable, whereas beta testing is just unstructured. It can be pretty much anything. Delta is adopted by the industry leaders. We saw the logo list before. We're using that. It's purpose built for this solution, so it gets you reliable feedback every single time, produces actionable recommendations, as opposed to not knowing whether or not you're going to get results from it. You'll get results from it every single time. It's highly valued instead of being a necessary evil. It just has to be done, as beta is quite often viewed. And instead of just being an insurance to make sure that you're not going to have a bomb when it goes out, it helps make a good product great. Instead of a handful of ways, specifically around quality, that I'd like to talk, or we're going to talk about here in a minute. You could be asking yourself, is that for real? Is there actually a beta program in my company that I can tap into or get more from? Most likely, 87% of companies have some pre-release beta testing program. Like I said, we came up with 100 different terms for this right here, because beta is that phase, is that pre-release phase, what's going out. But 87% of companies have a program here. 70% of the Fortune 100 companies have theirs available where you can find it on the internet. When I say advertising, not necessarily they're advertising to people. You can find it if you look for it. Most beta phase testing is done by product and engineering teams. And so a lot of times it's just an add-on to what they're already doing. 57% of companies don't have a standard for running these types of tests. And so it's just whatever they can do and get from it, they get from it. And this is where I think you have an opportunity here to potentially get a lot more out of here that could help you out. And I'm just make a note though, if you are inside the minority that already has a process, some of this could be a refresher. May not get as much useful out of this here. But what my point is to look at this beta program that's most likely running inside your company and try to maximize that as resources are being pulled back. So little to no additional spend, more quality benefits. And so why do we care about it? Well, our CEO, Luke Fraley, has been pushing us towards this for a long time. And this is a paraphrase of a quote he's had a few years ago. Like the Pareto law, said we need to find the 30% of the test that brings 70% of the value and improve on that. So identifying what exactly is happening inside these pre-release tests and get all the value out of it we possibly can with the least amount of effort. And that's what we drive towards. So there's three opportunities in particular that I would like to talk about. First is improving the quality. Even when resources are being cut back, we have fewer people who are able to do the black box testing that you had happening before. You could have fewer accesses to vendors who are providing quality feedback. So you need to maintain that level of quality, because if your product goes out, as we know, if the quality isn't there, then there's problems. Also, you have to maintain at the same velocity. Like I mentioned earlier on, there's a good chance that even with fewer resources, the deadline didn't move. It's still going to be there. You're going to try to drive towards it. And by using Delta, you can still make that deadline, maintaining your velocity. And lastly, and very important too, can help strengthen the team. And so by having a common goal that everyone's driving towards and keeping good communication within the organization, it keeps the team strong as they go towards it. This is a 4x4. If you're from California, probably recognize it immediately. It's in and out. It's a big burger. Whenever I was writing this out, I was trying to go for a 4x4 layout. I only hit with 3x3, so it doesn't really matter, I guess. California, we love the 4x4s. Hopefully there's some meat here and not too much cheese. So opportunity one, improving quality. Delta testing can fill a handful of different gaps that can appear whenever you have resources that pull back. One of the companies I worked at, we had resources moved around, and a lab of 10 black box testers went down to 1. And the person ended up being just focused on this right here, because they had to continue all the tests that were happening, but with 1/10 the people to do it. And 3 areas in particular you can get a lot out of Delta testing is exploratory testing, device testing, and soak testing. So let me zero on these just for a minute. First off, with exploratory testing, that's black box testing. And sometimes some organizations, you have a whole group that's dedicated to that. They're just trying to do the user acceptance testing, the black box testing, while you have other groups that are doing gray box testing and white box testing, device testing. They're diving deep down into it, getting closer and closer to engineering. Whenever you need to do that deep dives inside the testing still, but you don't necessarily have to have all that black box testing happening in-house. You can push that out to your beta testers and get them to do that explicitly for you. As you're doing that, there's 2 things you want to pay attention to. First is get it to your target market. User acceptance testing is sometimes done by a manager, or it's done by a product manager, or it's being done by a set of QA people who are just trying to act like they're part of the target market. If you send this out to a beta group that is that way as well, you're going to get the same kind of feedback back. Here, you can actually improve your feedback coming from the exploratory testing by getting in front of your target market. They're the ones who are actually going to use it, and they can tell you what exactly is going to be broken with it whenever they get inside their hands, not what could possibly be broken with it. And getting feedback directly from the target market is has a lot more weight behind it than someone who's trying to act like it. On the flip side, don't hand them a test plan with it. See this happen a handful of times where people are running a beta test, not Delta. They don't know exactly what they're doing, and they send out a product and they give them a QA checklist and say, can you go through these 30 different items and say, does this button press? Yes or no? Does this tab open? Yes or no? Those people who are actually going to use your product don't think that way. That's great for the internal test, and that has to happen. And that's where you need to focus your resources when you have fewer resources, is making sure those detailed tests are happening. Let this exploratory testing be more exploratory. Give them general features to go through and just give them general guidance. Something to consider when it comes to device testing. And so the average American household that is connected in general, there's 17 connected devices. This is a whole lot of devices out there that you could have access to very quickly just by looking at your beta group that's out there right now and cataloging what they do have. Also, your average person is changing their smartphone every 2 to 3 years. And with most people having smartphones, again, there's a ton of different options that are sitting out there that you don't have to bring in-house. You don't have to spend the money on, you don't have to spend the resources to catalog, you don't have to use the time to try to test on. It's just sitting out there waiting for you to use. The thing is that you be able to use it effectively. And this goes right into device testing. And this is looking to discover issues that appear only on certain devices. A couple things to look to do right here. One is, it seems simple, but it's often overlooked, is having a list of devices that your testers own, so you can quickly identify who can help you out. Quite often, you know that there's a handful of testers out there, and you may know 1 or 2 devices they have. Try to get a pretty comprehensive list. You can find yourself finding gaps inside of your quality assurance today, but also finding new opportunities where you can test environments or ecosystems that you believe are going to be a problem before this goes live. On the flip side, don't do a random selection. You actually use that data. And prioritize who you're sending off your limited beta test units to, if it's hardware, or if it's a software product and you're not limited by the test units, you will be limited by your own bandwidth to review the feedback that comes back in. So make sure you're focusing on those who have the technographic environment that you're looking for. And then thirdly here, soak testing. Soak testing can take a long time. There's different types of soak tests. If you're doing one that's in your company, it's a good chance you're looking for something very specific, and it could literally be a soak test where you have a device submerged inside water for a long period of time to see what happens with it. And sometimes it finds stuff. Interesting story is we were talking to someone who was running a Delta test, and they discovered a problem with a waterproof case for a camera. They've been running it through all their soak tests in-house. Everything was going fine. Taking it out in the field for a little bit and found out that if they went down below 10 feet in the ocean with the camera, that the case would squeeze just enough to push the power button and turn it off. And so the divers were getting all frustrated because they would go down to take pictures and the camera would just turn off when they would go down to do it. A couple things to think about right here is use a cadence check-in with simple tasks. If you're asking someone to use this for a long period of time, don't expect too much back too fast, but always expect something back though. So have a simple cadence check-in. They know exactly what's going to happen every couple days, every couple weeks, whatever it is, so they can put it on their calendar and check in with you on how things are going. It keeps them engaged through the test and give them simple tasks throughout that. On the flip side, don't go into this test without some level of confidence in the product. And sometimes this requires a little customer zero dog fooding test in advance to make sure that it's mostly working, because the broken products just won't provide useful feedback. Speaking of soak tests, I was actually on one for a company recently, and there's a good chance I'm going to be affected by it at the end of this webinar. So this product here, and they found out this problem. The audio turns off after 15 minutes. So it's a brand new desktop system. It works great when you're listening to it, but if it doesn't get signals from the computer for 15 minutes, it shuts itself off to save power. And so at the end of this presentation, it's going to be more than 15 minutes, and I'm probably going to have to make sure that it's turned on whenever Brianna tries to talk to me. Again, that was the #1 complaint on this. Great speakers overall, but if they hadn't gone out to this test, they wouldn't have found this issue. And right now I'm just waiting for it to be fixed. Here's a bonus: user testing. So you can get user testing information from your beta team as well. And a couple different ways to think about this. One, look for design and satisfaction feedback coming from your testers. Maybe hard to believe, but 2/3 of usability issues can be self-reported by users, and quite often are if they're engaged. And so you still need to run your observational studies to fine-tune and understand what's happening, but you can get 2/3 of those usability issues right back from your beta, or in this case, I'm going to say Delta group, as you transition them from just being a project that you had no specific outcomes from. Look for this, make this a Delta. Second, don't assume that you have to manually review or use some kind of artificial intelligence to discover sentiment. They're doing a lot of great work inside this field right here, and it's getting better and better. And obviously you can do response coding yourself if you'd like to, if that is your thing, to try to figure out what the sentiment of all the different feedback is. But a simple way to get a quick beat on sentiment is to ask them the sentiment first, and ask them what caused that. 5-star ratings. Everyone's familiar with these days, and that really is just a sentiment. It's okay, how do I feel about what just happened here? And you can use that at the feature level. So instead of asking for a piece of feedback and then trying to figure out whether it's positive feedback or negative feedback, ask them to give you a quick rating first, and then ask for the feedback after that. We found that people rate something between 1 and 3. Generally, there's a problem there. And the problem is more severe the lower it goes. But if it's between 1 and 3, they don't have anything really positive to say. They hit something that made them feel like it wasn't working correctly. If it's a 4, still, most of the time, not a lot positive to say. They generally have some ideas on how to make it better. And they'll tell you that inside that. Unless it's a 5, most of the time it is pretty positive. They have good things to say about it. And so by asking just a simple 5-star rating up front before you collect feedback, you can aim people down the right path to give you the type of feedback that aligns with their sentiment. If it's 1 through 3, say, why is it 1 through, what problems did you run into? Tell me about the bug you hit. And they're going to tell you about the bug they hit. If it's a 4, ask for the ideas to make it better. If it's a 5, ask for the specific things that are great about it, that we can get that and draw the information you need out of your testers. How Center Code helps right here. We have a simple feature satisfaction survey, which does just this. It asks 5-star scales on the features and experiences to our product, and then drives the testers down through whatever, based on their sentiment, the type of feedback they should be giving. There's device profiles for all the users that are in center code, so it's easy to find exactly who has what devices and get them on a test. And there's a test designer that allows you to align your features up with a timeline and make sure everything is happening correctly. Opportunity number 2, maintaining velocity. When things need to get to the finish line, there's 3 different ways that a delta test helps maintain velocity. As you have, again, looking at fewer resources, you have more, require more from your resources. With this delta test, as you're transitioning from just a beta that's just running out there to something that is more focused and agile and actionable, there's a few ways to do that. First off, use cadence phases. Instead of just pushing a product out and just seeing what happens, or looking for something on just a couple of days, let it run for a period of time, but have a cadence with that. Again, like we talked about earlier, a lot of people put it on their calendar, allow them to anticipate when you're going to ask something from them, and it keeps them focused for the short period of time. It allows them to know how much through the product you'd like them to go during that period of time, and allows you to figure out or be agile as well. So if you need to change something to the next phase, you can change something in the next phase, which leads to my next point. Use these, but don't lock in a long-term plan. Don't come in and say, okay, we have 10 different phases. I know exactly what I want to test out of each phase. You may want to have a general idea of how that works, and definitely know what your first 1 or 2 phases are, because you need to prioritize that, but leave the other ones open. Let the test kind of go, because as you're developing, you're going through your own internal QA, you're getting more information back. Even though you don't have a lot of time to make changes, you may want to focus on different areas later on than what you expected up front. So give yourself the flexibility to do that. And an easy way to do that is with having a phased approach. That way you don't have to try to randomly pick dates or say, okay, let's try to do this next weekend. You know exactly when you have the opportunity to make the move. And these can be quick. You can have phases as a couple of days at a time. Generally, this happens a week at a time, especially for consumer products, because a lot of consumers need the weekend in order to use the product. Second, stay focused. Goes back to just a pretty basic principle. Focusing on the area that's important to you. First, put your high priority issues up front. And this may seem like a no-brainer, but if you look at that phased approach there, look across all the features you have and put those high priority ones at the front. Now, if they're not fully developed and you know that you don't want the testers to focus necessarily on them quite yet, because this can fast track with your internal testing. You want your internal testing to be going, and you can be doing revs on your software, pushing out additional beta builds, because it still is inside the beta phase. And you can have your delta test running very similarly. You can have them focus on different areas as the builds come out, and builds are making improvements to that. So, but definitely keep things focused. On the flip side, don't over-focus your testers. And this just goes back to the QA style test plans. I've seen this a handful of times, and this is dangerous, because people either will try to go through the test plan, not understand what they're doing, or they'll just get burned out and not give you a lot of feedback at all. I want to give them an experience level feature to go after. If you're familiar with UX testing or usability testing, it's very similar right there. What you're doing in-house is you're giving them experience to go through, and then you watch them go through the experience. What we're doing in this case is you're giving them experience to go through, and allow them to give you feedback on that experience instead of you just observing. Last off, you need to have feedback that's actionable, because if you don't have feedback that's actionable, it's not going to help you get towards that goal. Way to do this is just measuring the impact of each issue that comes into you. And there's 4 different ways or 4 primary fields that play into the impact of an issue. That's the feature that it's on. How important is this feature? Is it one that's up front? You expect to get a lot of traffic on? It's going to increase its impact. Second is the severity of the actual problem that was hit. Is this just a cosmetic issue, or is this actually a show-stopping bug? Third is frequency. As we look at all those different environments that are out there that your testers are working in, how frequently is this happening? If it's only happening inside one environment, you look at the device list and you're like, okay, you know what? iPhone 3, that probably is not going to happen that often. It's probably going to bring down the severity some here. Lastly is the tester impact. And that's the subjective point from the tester side. If it's impacting a lot of testers and they're talking a lot about it, then let that drive your severity up. Use their feedback, even though the internal severity of your company you may look at your definitions and say, okay, this isn't that big of a deal. If it's getting a lot of feedback from that test group is representative of your target market, that can help drive that issue and get it fixed, because you know it's going to drive your star rating down. On the flip side, or not on the flip side, but don't collect just issues. And the only reason I say don't collect just issues is because you're going to get ideas and praise with your issues. So quite often you have like a single forum post, say, okay, give us all your feedback here, and it just comes in and you have to figure it out on your own. Very similar to that 5-star rating where you can get an idea of the sentiment up front and then point the tester to the correct place. This is where you want to have 3 places at least. And the first is issues, second is ideas, third one is praise. If they're rating something between 1 and 3 stars, they hit an issue. Guide them over to issues, let them put an issue there. If they have an idea, they're rated a 4th star, they probably have a good idea. Ask them for that idea. That can go onto your roadmap potentially, or it could point you in some direction for a bug that you didn't know existed, or potentially a way to improve the product very quickly. And lastly is praise. And this is can be used for marketing, used for case studies, all kinds of things can be done with praise. Again, if you don't have these 3 segmented, you're gonna get all 3 inside the same spot, and you're gonna have to do that yourself. So let the testers do the work for you by giving them the 3 different locations to put feedback in. Again, a few ways the Center Code helps with this is by doing daily Scrum reports that are sent off. That lets you know as a test manager exactly what's happening on a daily basis, what kind of feedback you're getting. There's features and activities. They guide testers down experiences. And there's different types of feedback that are just baked into the platform, which are the issues, ideas, and praise. So you don't have to worry about trying to build it out yourself and figuring out how to set it all up. The third opportunity we have here is to strengthen the team. And this one here is probably the most ambiguous of all of them. It's hard to get a beat on, but here's a few ways that this can help out though. First off is the team huddles, getting the team together around a specific mission and specifically around the customer feedback, because you're trying to build something for the customer. Second is customer zero, and you have 2 different customers. You have the customer you're sending the product out to, but then everyone who's inside the company is also a customer of that product inside of some ways. The job they have, they're working towards, makes them invested inside that product. A lot of products that we're all working on, we could be a customer of ourselves. The people inside the company are truly the customer zero of that product. And third, understanding the impact of your test. If you can't quantify what you're trying to put out, then it's going to be difficult to continue to do it. And there's a lot of ways to really quantify the delta test. So first off, the team huddles, bring the team together. Again, I keep saying cadence. Do this on a cadence basis. Put it out there on the calendar so it's happening for 15 minutes once a phase. That way you can take a look at the phase real fast and see what's going on there. And come into this with an agenda. I think a very simple agenda, which uses a Scrum style approach on a phase, is take a look back, see how the last phase did, take a look at your present, see how this current phase is going, and take a look inside the future and see what you're going to do inside your next phase. That allows you to be flexible. So you take a look back, see what worked, what didn't work, take a look at where you're at right now, see if things are working today, see just a current state, and then plan your next state. Okay, we need to change these things inside this next phase because what we've seen is happening inside the past phase or inside the previous phase or inside the current phase. Second, don't forget to review the actual feedback itself. And this is really important, especially if you have a handful of different stakeholders you're bringing into this huddle, which would be great if you could, because those actual quotes mean a lot. And reading the sentiment from the tester and actually hearing inside the words helps build a connection with that tester, and also helps build a connection with your product, because you understand how people are feeling about it or how they're going to feel about it. And so you build the empathy for the customer in order to build a better product. It's very powerful. Second here is dog fooding, or I would prefer to say customer zero. This allows your first customer, which are the employees within your company, to get a chance to know the product and get connected to its success, either by using the product themselves and be able to provide feedback, which a lot of people would like to, or just knowing the product and how it works. They can talk better to it, and they can tell their friends and everyone about it. And they just become connected to the product, as opposed to just being one more person who's doing some little piece of QA on it or doing a little piece of research on it. Actually having the product, working with the product, and having communication with the other people who are working on the product too, makes it much bigger. The second here, don't overtask, but also don't accept silence. It's easy to think that the people within your company should be the most invested inside it. So you should be able to give them tons of tasks, and they'll just take all those tasks and run them down. But you gotta remember, they're working with the same limited resources that you are. And so don't overtask them, give them a couple things to do, get them involved with the product. They'll use it, some will use it a lot, some won't use it that much. On the flip side, don't accept silence. If someone's not going to use it, they don't want to be part of the team or don't have the ability to help you out, use your limited resources someplace else, because someone else inside the company most likely does want to do that. It doesn't have to be unfriendly. They probably will understand, hey, if you can't help out, just give it back. I'll give it to somebody else here, and they're most likely be on the same page with you, because everyone's trying to drive towards the same goal. And then lastly, test impact, being able to measure what you are getting from this test. And a couple ways to do this. First off is tracking the issues you discovered, which seems obvious with customer testing, but then go on and find out which ones got fixed. And if you can, get the potential impact of each of those. Because that allows you to draw a line back and say, yes, my test was successful, or no, my test wasn't successful. With a Delta test, you're gonna be successful 99% of the time. And don't forget to let everyone know the highlights of the customer feedback. So this can be both with just general updates going out, but also pointed things to different people inside different departments. So if you get a lot of praise in, send the praise over to marketing. Maybe they can find some useful stuff right there. If you're getting ideas in, send it over to product. Let them see what the roadmap could be. This builds confidence to that product too, because people are seeing this customer feedback themselves. And so how CenterCode helps here, we have a Delta Huddle dashboard that's built in. It has a quick agenda, it has the past, the present, and the future laid out there with the ability to change things very quickly. There's automated engagement with our bot, which keeps testers engaged, much better than trying to just engage with testers yourselves. And there's issue prioritization that's happening automatically, bubbling the top issues up to the top based on the key fields I talked about earlier. So real quick rundown, 3 different ways that you can use a resource you most likely have inside your company, which is beta, to put a little more structure on it and get something from it that's going to help you with your quality, your velocity, and your teams. And if you're interested in partnering with CenterCode, or if you already are a partner with CenterCode, just to remind you, there's some stuff you can get from this here. We have a lot of experience, we have a lot of resources. If you can't use our tool itself, definitely get our resources. We have over 500 items that are published, give you all kinds of insights on how to talk to testers, how to talk to employees, how to structure project plans, how to make sure you're looking at experiences and not looking at just a QA checklist, seeing what the different test types are and how to best maximize that. We've seen overall that people who use CenterCode are getting higher star ratings from getting this customer feedback in, quickly make those final changes and get it out. And by using CenterCode, you get a significant decrease in average time and cost. And so SaaS is there to automate stuff and make it easier. It does. A couple of use cases that Brianna already talked about, but just to go back over again, that's competitive edge. You use this to understand your competition better. Customer zero, use this within your own company to get employees together, get behind this product as it's going out. Product launch, that's launching the product out for the first time, something that's brand new. And product growth, making updates to it, making sure those updates aren't going to do like Nike did a couple of years ago and brick 1 million shoes with the wrong update. And what you're looking to do here is grow your maturity over time. So a lot of companies start off inside the level 1, level 2 area. You have some traditional ad hoc testing going on. You have this beta test that isn't really being used very successfully, but it has to go because there's a couple big bugs it finds every single time. By putting a little more process and a little more methodology behind it, you can get yourself up pretty quickly and easily to an optimized program where you get a lot from that. It's a very valuable program. With that said, don't panic. So this is our office, or was our office until everything changed a couple of years ago. And those 2 words right there can mean a lot. It's a lot of different places. So think about this from time to time. Just don't panic. Things are going to be fine. And this is just hopefully a couple more tools in your tool belt that may help out.
Awesome.
Brianna, like I said, my audio is probably off. Let me turn this back on again.
It lasted throughout the whole time. I was impressed. I was ready to jump in. Yeah, I have a couple of points and then we'll get into the Q&A, but I thought that you brought a great perspective around really maximizing your testing resources that a lot of times may already exist within, your organization already. And so I think that's especially important that we're noticing, with all of these cutbacks and things like that are happening with either personnel or budget cuts, that some employees that are still around are now left to, on top of their responsibilities that they already have on their plate. Now they're left to manage these beta tests on top of, everything else that they've already got going on. So I think that's important. And we did have a timely question actually to that point that was submitted from someone that I'd like to pass over to you, John.
Yeah.
How can one identify if their organization already has resources around beta testing? And then where would they even start to figure that out?
Actually, it's funny. easy way to identify this, is on most places, is do a couple of Google searches. So search like your company's name, user testing, beta testing, or throw a couple different terms out like that. And like I said, 70% of the Fortune 100 companies have these where you can find them on the internet pretty easily. If you have one say your company, and most companies do, you're probably gonna find it pretty easily just by a couple little searches like that. And maybe surprise you what the resource that's sitting over there that isn't being used today. But if that doesn't work, or if you want to do it from the internal to the external, there's 3 places where it normally lives at. It normally lives inside of QA if it's under engineering, because it's considered an extension of QA. It lives under product because they're trying to understand the product right before it goes live and make the final tweaks to it. Or it lives inside marketing, because marketing is looking to understand the things they can promote from it and to do the market research there. And so take a look at the internet, but then if you need to look internally, look at one of those 3 departments and you're probably going to find it there. Great question.
Awesome. That was helpful. Thank you, John. So that was it for the questions. I think that was a great one. Thanks again for your presentation. And then just a reminder for those that have hung on with us throughout the whole presentation. We did record today's session, so that will be available for on-demand viewing. We will be sending that out the next day or so you can expect to see that in your inbox. And then feel free to pass that along to anyone else on your team or any leadership that might also benefit from that presentation. And as a reminder too, the Center Code Resource Library is massive. We've got a ton of resources around pretty much anything and everything that you need around user testing, depending on where you're at in the life cycle there of testing as well. Some of those that we touched on. So other than that, thank you on behalf of John and Center Code and myself. Thanks for joining us and have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.